How's it going, everybody? Today we're going to be taking a look at how to do an oil change on a Ford Fiesta ST. This will work for all 2013 to 2017 models. I've got a few tips and tricks here for you guys to make sure you can do this project nice and efficiently. So first thing we have to do is lift the car. We're going to go ahead and use the pinch welds to start because lifting the Fiesta can be a little bit challenging, especially if it's lowered. So this front splitter, it makes it kind of hard to get a jack completely under the front of the car. And so rather than lifting it all at once, we're going to go one corner at a time. So I lift up one of the rear corners first, place a jack stand on the front corner on the pinch weld, as seen here, lower that corner, and then repeat on the other side. You can then go ahead and lower the car on to both jack stands, but it's going to be a little bit lower than we wanted, so we're going to then use the jack in the middle on this sort of center brace here, which we can use to lift both sides of the car up at the same time, get it a little bit higher so that we can work easily under the car. Then you can make sure your jack stands are nice and stable, all 4 feet are on the ground. Give your car a little bit of a test shake to make sure that it's all nice and solid, and then I'm also going to leave the jack under here to make sure that it stays safe in case of a failure of either of the jack stands. Make sure to chock your wheels on both sides, and now we are ready to get under the car. Alright, now let's go ahead and get started with this oil change. So the first sort of difficulty here is that the oil drain plug is facing the rear of the car, which if you open it is going to spill oil all over this cross member right here. So instead what I like to do is crack it just a little bit, and then once you get it finger loose, you can loosen it the rest of the way. And then just get a nice big funnel like this here, which you can place in front of the stream of oil to capture it and make sure you don't spill it all over your driveway. If you don't do it this way, which I'll show you right now in a second, what you can expect is oil all over that crossbar as well as all over your driveway. So the funnel definitely makes it a little bit cleaner and less cleanup is necessary. As you can see here, my first time doing an oil change on this car was a lot messier. I then like to open up the oil cap to make the oil drain a little bit faster. And now we can turn our attention to the oil filter. Now the oil filter is in a frustratingly tight place on this car here. And so standard tools are not super efficient in getting this off. You do have a couple options for the oil filter. You could obviously use a standard oil filter wrench like this that goes onto a ratchet, but I prefer these pliers instead. They're much thinner and it's a lot easier to get in between all the hoses and to get a good grip on the oil filter. Now, I unfortunately got my head in the shot here, but as you can see here with the pliers, I'm able to loosen it, and then by hand I can get it the rest of the way. You will spill some oil just because the oil cooler is right underneath it and you'll get oil all over it. But once you spin it off, you should be able to sort of finagle it through the hoses and get the old oil filter out of the way. Now, as I'll demonstrate here, it is possible using an oil filter wrench, such as this, or socket, I guess, whatever you want to call it. However, it is going to be a lot tighter. You can use a long handle ratchet from the top and use that to sort of wiggle it out. But getting it on is especially going to be difficult because it's going to be further out and you're going to have even less space to work. So this is not my preferred method. I really do prefer those pliers, which are relatively cheap. You can get them for 10 to 15 bucks. There is no O-ring on the oil plug. There's just this built-in rubber gasket, so you don't have to replace that. Every few oil changes, you probably should replace the whole thing. We torque this guy down to 21 foot-pounds. And now we can go ahead and replace our oil filter and then go ahead and start filling the oil. For the oil filter, I like to dab a little bit of new oil along the gasket to make sure you get a nice even seal with the surface. So I just go ahead and dab a little bit on there, and then we can go ahead and twist it back. Now there's no need to really do this too tight, so just go ahead and go hand tight and then a little bit more, and then we can go ahead and raise our car, get the jack stands out of the way, and then drop the car back to the ground. Make sure to not turn your car on, obviously, because we have no oil in it. And now we can go ahead and fill the car up with some fresh oil. Alright, now onto the subject of oil. There's a little bit of controversy as to which oil is best. Now, Ford does approve both 5W30 and 5W20. I use 5W20, but what's more important though is having a low NOAC volatility and low sulfated ash content, because we have a GDI engine on the ST, which is a gasoline direct injection, and you can get really bad carbon buildup on the valves. And so these two measurements are really important. Now, in terms of low NOAC and SAPs, there's a list here on the Fiesta forums, which has a bunch of different oils and their NOAC and SAPs content. Unfortunately, there isn't a ton of information on SAPs for a lot of oils. And some of the oils, including the ones that Ford recommends, like Motorcraft, are actually not all that low in NOAC and SAPs. Some things like AmSoil are lower, but as you'll see here, they're pretty expensive. What I found to be the best bang for your buck is the Pennzoil Platinum Full Synthetic, which is about $22 for 5 quarts. You can see here Motorcraft is $84 for 12 quarts. AmSoil is $69 for a gallon. These are both much more expensive than the comparative Pennzoil, which I found to be a really good bargain for off the shelf. You're obviously welcome to use these more expensive alternatives, but I'm happy with the Pennzoil. I've had the car now for 2 years, plenty of oil changes, and it's been running just great. So this is what I went with. You're going to go ahead and fill up the car now with about 4.3 quarts of whatever oil you choose, and then we'll be on our merry way. Now, the dipstick is another shortcoming of this car here. It's very hard to read. This new style of dipstick that uses this sort of plastic at the bottom, it gets oily really easily, so you can't really tell where the oil level is at. So what I've found is really effective is using some brake cleaner on a shop rag or a paper towel. Just clean off the end of the dipstick really well with the brake cleaner, and then once you reinsert the dipstick, it'll be a much easier thing to read. So as you can see here, dipstick goes straight back in, and once I pull it out, I'll get a very accurate oil reading from the car. And the final thing we need to do is reset the oil change light. So there's a little service wrench that tells you need to change your oil. As you can see here on my dash, I have the little wrench underneath the tachometer. So what we need to do is we need to turn on the engine, or sorry, turn on the car, but not the engine. So don't touch the clutch. You're then going to press down both the brake and the accelerator all the way to the floor for about 30 seconds. Once you turn the car back on, the oil wrench will disappear and you are all done. I hope this video was helpful. Thank you guys for watching. Catch you in the next one.